you. So what we're going to do is we're going to have reporters from each group give us their top 2 or 3 recommendations or thoughts that they'd like to share with the group. I know I need a recorder, and I think Lauren was going to record the report outs. Okay. But I would like to request that if we need you to have written down your thoughts, your recommendations, either on the Post-it or the Post-it board. And if you just leave those at the table, and please put whoever wrote it, their name and contact information. So if we have any questions, we can call you. And this way we can record all of this information and keep it for moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to go in reverse. I'm going to start with group number 5. And I know we had 3 tables. So please don't repeat. If you hear something, don't repeat it. Have another recommendation. So I'm going to start with Nan's table. Melanie, do you have someone's going to report out? Okay, just 2 to 3, please.
We didn't talk about which 2 to 3, so I get the liberty to decide which 2 to 3. I think the ones that stood out for me that we can practically act on, we came up with some really good slogans, and apropos for this conference, keeping families together. So the idea of bringing housing authorities together around the national conference around ending family homelessness, and bringing some other housing authorities that have done some work around family reunification is an idea that we talked about, particularly with Oakland Housing Authority and moving to work. And we came up with a lot of slogans, which we'll have recorded here for all of our campaigns. We talked about exploring more private-public development opportunities. We need more housing in general, and more housing that has some units targeted to people who are extremely low income. And I think the other big one for me was, we call it Measure Mo, but having a ballot measure where we either are requesting, like in San Francisco, a bond for affordable housing development, or some kind of new tax revenue source for more affordable housing. Is that okay, group?
Yeah. Good job. Okay, our next table.
Okay, we actually have a couple property owners at our table, so which was great because we were able to talk about, from their perspective, what it is like to bring in tenants with subsidies. So it was our tack on the conversation was perhaps a little bit different from the sort of campaign ideas. So we have a few things on the need to have landlords in the conversation and in the room, because we need to understand their perspective and their business people. So, and the kind of incentive structure that could be improved from that perspective to have more use of the vouchers that are there. So we talked about kind of shorter term and longer term solutions on sort of tax breaks, possibly on the state or federal level, and that's kind of a different, involving different partners than perhaps we're thinking of when we talk about, you know, enhancing the number of subsidies. Our second was more about, and kind of resonated this morning with the fact that 10,000 vouchers are being given for veterans homelessness annually, that a compelling story is being told. So what can we do to tell that story effectively for families and children who equally need, I mean, everyone who's homeless needs these vouchers. So how can we effectively tell that and communicate that story? And so we were resonating with the housing as a human right. And then, you know, should we do war, you know, think back to war on poverty, war on homelessness, kind of having some public campaign to that end. And thinking about, are there other departments besides, you know, sort of HUD as the place through which the vouchers, the subsidies come, Department of Labor, you know, if there's sort of connections on that And then our final one, we have one more, was just kind of getting more into the detail. We wanted to, if we could, look at these vouchers having tie-ins, sort of like the housing scholarship programs, other programs that have happened around the country on tying education goals or employment goals to vouchers, and really having that sort of structure, kind of restructuring happening with the subsidy program. So I have a different angle on things.
Thank you. And our third and final, table 5. Right here. We got a mic for you.
We wanted to use and create housing, not subsidies. We want inclusionary zones, common advocacy agenda with allies, local funding via bond or ballot, and to build a pot of housing development dollars.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, number 4, group number 4. Right back there. Thank you.
So we had a little bit of a free-flowing discussion, and I'm going to try to pick out a couple of key themes we kept coming back to. Some of it was around how do we structure subsidies in the most effective way possible, was one of kind of the theme that we came back to a few times. And the other one was about kind of the existing dollars and how do we better understand how to more effectively use the housing resources that are currently available, and how could data and research inform that. And then thinking about some of the discussion today around system integration, and how to make system integration efforts more effective, and what those possibilities are.
Thank you.
It's like 6, you could tell this was a research group because there's like 6 sheets of paper over here with stuff written on.
Okay, and now table number 3, which is right in the back, and it's cultural competence and mandating reporting.
So this is actually the most courageous table here.
That's right.
I think we had like
Got
4.
it.
Here they are. All right. So there's a couple of things that came out. One, there's a self-reflection piece in terms of talking about institutional and system bias, but also individual bias. We kind of focused on the individual and how difficult it is to change people's experience from their childhood to their helping profession now. So some of the takeaways we came with is that it starts with kind of the folks here at the table, that if you have staff reporting to you, it's an opportunity to be a buffer, a sounding board in terms of what they're reporting. And so if you hear hot words, that we typically hear on the hotline, and I'll share some, person being volatile, a deadbeat dad, person's homeless, addict, child's unsupervised, dirty, filthy home, multiple fathers, prostitute, we want to one-up the situation. These are all words that we use in CFS as triggers, as an opportunity to have a conversation and start building the professional that's before you. So I think, what we talked about, one, is having that supervision happen and take that opportunity to help the person grow in terms of their experience dealing with mandated reporting and child abuse issues. Secondly, we all did this, I think, in some capacity within our profession, is really writing down what you're feeling when you see something that's occurring. So I think the experience is when you see abuse or neglect happening, you have a staff person coming to you and saying, like, I need to report this. That's the automatic reaction. But again, how does that affect you? Because you'll have to engage this person or a similar community member. So actually taking the time to having that conversation. And it has to be very courageous. We also talked about training. Yes, training. And we feel training is appropriate, cultural competence. However, it has to be deeper. You have to take the deeper dive. And right now the hot topic is cultural humility. So there has to be awareness. I can never own her experience, her culture. We're just too different. But the culture, humility. And so taking the deeper dive, it starts at one level, but it has to be deeper in terms of really looking at racial bias and using a racial lens. So our takeaways, if you captured them, I'm your point person at this point.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, and then table or topic 2, which is the strategies to link families to benefits prior to entry into the homeless system.
So some of the things that we talked about working towards is making technology better for the families, working in the waiting room so that they're bringing out not just the clerks, but the social workers are coming out into the lines and, meeting them right there, and improving the customer service and simplifying the process. And some of the innovations that we talked about was that there's an app on the phone that's being currently in progress right now, so that clients can access all their information on their phone. And we also talked about having kiosks so that there's one place that people can go to, and it doesn't have to just be the one place in Oakland or Livermore. It can be in different places. So, and then we talked about having an actual language line and reminding people that there is currently, correct? Okay, that there is a language line. And we also talked about how having a place-based model and working with the community organizations, where the social workers would go to nonprofits and be right there so that they can catch them and they don't have to catch a bus or buses or however to get there. So I think that's about it for us.
Thank you. Excellent. And so I believe we had a second table two. Yeah.
So ours is very brief. We second some of the stuff that they said, but basically what we said was having an all-access screening process, so where they can kind of get multiple things done. So not just CalFresh or not just GA or Medi-Cal, but kind of one-stop shop for them to be able to get all of those services screened for at one time at one location.
Excellent. Thank you. And now table one, topic one.
All right, so our first suggestion is development of a cross-system question to screen families for housing instability and/or homelessness. And we felt that this set of questions should apply and be used by hotline reporters, as well as staff who are working directly with families, and staff in other systems that come into contact with families that are either involved with or at risk at becoming involved with the child welfare system. Our second thought, and this probably comes out of me being the lawyer in the room, but we note that these same families often come into contact in multiple court systems, and we thought that if there could be a embedded sort of housing navigator who is in family court, in the juvenile court system, and in the truancy court system, that could literally take the parent and or the family from sitting at council table into another room and immediately sit down and figure out housing needs. That would be much more effective than trying to send a family to multiple different places for help. And to sort of echo the kiosk suggestion, that we thought there could even be a kiosk in the courthouse, because so many of these families sort of go through our court system and our justice system. We also felt that a housing navigator would be very helpful embedded into another road to safety, as well as perhaps in the school districts that are where the students already, they know that there's housing crisis within those communities, as well as CPS referrals. So at the district level and or at the school level would be a great place to embed a housing navigator. And our final thought was that we really need more support for foster youth. We need more recruiting of foster families, especially ones who would be willing to take older children, not just infants, and provide more support at an earlier age for foster youth before 18 to 21 in order to eventually support permanency.